this PIQE alumni webinar. And so for those that don't know, or you've just graduated from one of your PIQE classes, you are now part of the PIQE alumni network. And this is a network where we're hoping that you get a lot of resource out of this, trainings, information that you can take back for your family, for your community, so that in the future you're better prepared to tackle on or to be a advocate and a good partner in education to your students and your families. So the aim of the alumni program is to do just that, provide knowledge and expertise to you all as you navigate the educational system. And so with us this evening, we have a great topic as y'all, especially if you are parents of 12th graders, 11th graders, you know that college is soon approaching. Maybe some of you are getting ready to apply to university with your students next year, or maybe you're filling out applications currently, right? And so for that, we know that along with that also comes a big expense as your student goes off to college. And so we have today a conversation around filling out the FAFSA, filling out the CADAA, and so that your students able to financially succeed in college as well. Before we move on, I want to say a little comment in Spanish. So para las familias que están aquí um, en esta junta y hablan solamente en español, la semana pasada tuvimos la presentación en inglés sobre perdón, en español sobre el FAFSA. Y si no estuvieron en esa presentación, va a haber una otra presentación en el mes de enero, para los que no tuvieron oportunidad de estar la semana pasada. Entonces, esta conversación va a ser exclusivamente en inglés. Ah, si gustan, vamos a mandar esa información cuando venga la oportunidad en enero, pero si gustan poner mandar su correo electrónico a Estela, que va a poner directamente, pueden hacerlo para que ella los pueda incluir en la presentación de enero.
Sí, también Isaac, gracias Adolfo. Isaac también puso un enlace que los va a llevar al video am, que del evento que pasó la semana pasada. Entonces ahí van a poder ver la presentación en español.
Sí, y también sé que algunos de ustedes a lo mejor tomaron esa presentación para suplementar un parte de sus clases. Entonces, si es así, de todos modos vengan a la de enero porque aunque tengan la información, ah, tuvieron que estar presentes para esa conversación, pero todavía hay tiempo y todavía hay otra oportunidad que viene en enero. Bueno, es con eso. So we move on. So tonight, so as I mentioned, we're talking about the importance of FAFSA, how to complete it, what are some of the misunderstandings, some of the things that we might not have clear, right? When I know it's a daunting process when it comes to something so important like the education of our students. We don't want to fill it out wrong. We don't want to hurt our students by filling out the form. So tonight, we have partnered up with the great folks from CSAC, which is California Student Aid Commission. They are the organizations that distribute the funding that help folks just like yourselves throughout the state to answer questions around FAFSA, answer questions around CADAA, answer questions also around the middle income scholarship. And so we're going to let them be the ones talking to you all this evening. And for that, I want to introduce the CSAC representative, Sarah Beth Brock, which is their outreach and marketing coordinator, which is gonna have a great presentation for us. And as she's speaking, we know you're gonna have questions. We know that you're gonna have comments. So if you want to write them out in the chat, and we will be keeping track of those. So at the end of her presentation, she can answer some of those questions and maybe questions that stem from those. So without further ado, Sarah, welcome.
Thank you, Adolfo. Good evening, everyone. Adolfo and Estella, can I suggest a slight modification since I've seen how many people are in the room? Which is there's a Q&A function in Zoom. It's at the bottom of the screen, and that Q&A function can help capture questions more easily and make sure that we don't lose them in the chat. And so if folks are willing to use the Q&A function, that would be helpful for sorting the questions later on. It'll keep the chatter in the chat about something else. Is that all okay with y'all? Cool. Awesome.
Sounds good.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My first name is Sarah Beth. I work for the California Student Aid Commission. I am the Outreach and Marketing Coordinator. I've been here for almost 4 years, but I've been in education for about 15 years. And it's my goal to make sure that you leave this presentation today having all your questions answered about how to complete financial aid for your student. Now, during the check-ins, I saw lots of people who were here with 9th grade students and 10th grade students. I want you to know you can learn a lot tonight, but you can't do anything yet because your student needs to be a high school senior before you can apply for financial aid. But I really want to applaud you for being here because you're going to be ahead of the game and you're going to know what to expect moving forward. I do this work because I'm really passionate about making sure that you have the right information. As I was saying to Adolfo and Isaac and Estella, this is really complicated and it shouldn't be. But my role here is to help make it easier for you. So there's no such thing as a silly question tonight. If you have a question, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A function. Use the Q&A box down below so that we can make sure to find your question and make sure it gets answered. There's going to be a lot of time for questions at the end. But first, I'm going to share some slides with you. And then I'm also going to give the slides to PIQE so that they can share the slides with you. So you are going to get a copy of these slides. Some of the slides have QR codes on them, and you might decide that you want to take your cell phone and scan them now, or you're going to get them tomorrow, and maybe you just want to listen to the presentation. That's up to you. But we're going to start tonight by talking a little bit about the financial aid steps. This is a quick overview of what it's like to apply for financial aid. Where you are is you're here at the beginning of the list. You're here starting to apply for college and applying for financial aid. Your students are ready to apply for college. The UC, the CSU applications are open, and the FAFSA and the California Dream Act application are open. A lot of people think that you have to apply for college first before you apply for financial aid. And I want to let you know that's not true. You can apply for financial aid now and still continue to apply for college later. Or you can apply for college first and then apply for financial aid. But you don't have to wait. And we recommend that you apply as soon as possible. Now, once you've applied for financial aid, you'll receive acceptance letters from the colleges that you've applied to. And at that point, you'll also get financial aid award offers from those colleges. Every college is going to have a different award offer, and we're going to talk about that tonight. Your job is going to be to compare those award offers and make a financial decision for your family. And then you have to do that by May 1st because that's the intent to enroll deadline. You declare your intention to enroll at a university by May 1st. And then the school will process your financial aid package and it will pay the bills at the school first. It pays for your tuition, your on campus housing, your meal plan, your health services fee, your student representation fee, whatever fees the campus charges. They're going to use the financial aid to pay for that first. And then whatever's left over is going to come to the student in what's called a refund. The student doesn't receive that refund until after the first day of classes. So I want you to know that this is a long process that you're entering into right now. We're going to talk about the steps along the way in tonight's presentation. I want to introduce you to the two applications that we have for financial aid in California. There's the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. That's for federal aid, state aid, and institutional aid. And there's a California DREAM Act application. That's California's application here. It's run by CSAC. It's owned by us. We're going to talk about what that means during tonight's presentation. FAFSA is for U.S. citizens and green card holders, also students who have asylum status or refugee status. CADAA is for undocumented students or mixed status family students. Mixed status is when you have somebody in the family who doesn't have documented status and somebody else in the family who does. And then temporary protected status students can also apply for the California DREAM Act application. Every year they open on October 1st, which is what happened this year, and the student has to apply every year until they graduate from college. You apply once per year to be considered for most grants. There isn't a separate application for Cal Grant or Middle Class Scholarship. It's one application for about a dozen programs. Your financial need is determined by information you enter into the application. Financial need includes reviewing your tax information from 2 years ago. So they're going to look at your 2024 taxes if you're applying for aid right now. One thing that surprises a lot of parents is that most students will need to provide parent information until the student reaches the age of 24 or meets independent requirements. And we're going to talk about what that means tonight. I want to apologize to you that I do not have a link to our FAFSA or CADAA walkthrough. That video is still being processed right now. When I do get it, though, I will share it with our partners at PIQE so that they can share it with you. That is a comprehensive walkthrough, like screen by screen. I'm going to go through some of the application tonight. Everything I'm about to say applies to you regardless of which application you're going to fill out. If you're going to fill out FAFSA, if you're going to fill out CADAA, everything I'm about to say is going to apply to both of you. And then I'll cover each application independently. This is a really great reference on how financial aid works. Most families need help to pay for college. The rising cost of living, the rising cost of tuition, the rising cost of pretty much everything means that most families need help. And so they apply for financial aid using the FAFSA or the CADAA. And that helps determine their financial need. Financial need can then be met by a number of different programs at the federal level, the state level, and the campus level. If you fill out FAFSA, you're eligible for all three. If you fill out CADAA, you're eligible for state and campus aid. Now, I really want to stress this. When you fill out FAFSA, they're going to tell you what the federal government is going to get you. But FAFSA can't tell you what the state and the campus will give you. Only the college can give you a comprehensive award package. A lot of families fill out FAFSA and they get frustrated and discouraged because FAFSA says you don't get anything. And that is only about federal aid. Aid in the state of California has a much higher income limit, and aid from the campuses has a higher income limit. And so what FAFSA tells you after you fill out FAFSA is not the whole story. I also want to remind you that each college is going to provide you a different financial aid package. I worked with a family recently. Student applied to 3 different CSUs, got 3 different packages from 3 different CSUs. And that's because the cost of living is different in different places. It costs more to live in San Francisco and go to San Francisco State than it does to live in Chico and go to Chico State. It costs more to live in Berkeley than it does to live in Davis. And so the cost of college is different in different places, and that affects your financial aid package. These are the different types of financial aid that fall into those 3 categories. When you fill out FAFSA or CADAA, you're applying for all of these. Every single program on here, you need FAFSA or CADAA for. Federal aid includes the Pell Grant, which is a very popular program, work study, and student loans. State aid includes the Cal Grant, the Middle Class Scholarship, Foster Youth Grants, and the Dreamer Service Incentive Grant, which is for CADAA students. Campus aid includes aid for the community colleges, the public universities, and merit-based scholarships. You need a financial aid application to get to any of these. And that's why it's so important that you apply. Even if you don't think you're going to qualify for anything, 80% of people who apply qualify for something on this list. And so it's really important to apply for financial aid. We're going to talk a little bit about Cal Grant now. Remember, when you apply for financial aid, regardless of which application, you're applying for Cal Grant. Whether it's FAFSA or CADAA, you're applying for Cal Grant. The information on the left is really a reference for you. I don't want to spend our time tonight going through numbers because it will be different for different students. These are ceilings, what you see on this chart. And so what's on this chart is the maximum amount of aid you could receive based on the Cal Grant and based on the university. What I do want to focus on is this chart on the right, which is the income ceiling chart. Now, if you have questions along the way, remember there's that Q&A box down below, and that's a really helpful tool to make sure we can find your question. The Cal Grant income ceiling chart helps you understand what the income limits are in the state of California. Remember, these are different than the federal limits. And so in the state of California, if you're a family of 2 or 3 or 4, you can make over $100,000 and still qualify for financial aid in the state of California. For families who make less than that, sometimes they qualify for a Cal Grant B. Cal Grant B technically has the highest payout of any Cal Grant, and that's because it's for folks who have very low to low income. It also is for students who have a lower GPA. Cal Grant is the only program on this list that has a GPA requirement. And that GPA is typically the student's GPA at the end of their junior year. As you can see, it's a really generous requirement, over a 3.0 to qualify for Cal Grant A, over a 2.0 to qualify for Cal Grant B. So students who are worried that that 1B or that one, negative grade on their transcript is going to affect their Cal Grant, it's probably not. So the Cal Grant income ceiling charts are here to help you understand that aid is possible for you. Most families qualify for Cal Grant in California. You have to apply. The Middle Class Scholarship is a program that helps families that make above those income limits. Middle Class Scholarship has an income ceiling of $250,000. This is your income and your assets, and we're going to talk about what those mean when we look at the financial sections of both applications. This program, Middle Class Scholarship, is only for students who are at public universities. So it's the California State University system, the University of California system, and the community colleges that provide bachelor's degrees. There's a handful of community colleges across the state that have bachelor's degree programs. They qualify for this program. And so even if you don't think you'll qualify for Cal Grant, you might qualify for this program, which is another reason why you should apply. A lot of students decide that they're going to take a community college path. That's what I did. I went to community college right out of high school, and I studied a lot of different things, and I got this exact grant in order to do it. This is the Student Success Completion Grant. This grant, I'm sorry, I did not get this grant. I got the next grant. I got the Promise Grant. We're going to talk about the Promise Grant too. But the Student Success Completion Grant wasn't around, or I would have gotten it. The Student Success Completion Grant is for students who are enrolled in at least 12 units. And if they enroll in 15 units, it's worth even more. This is a program at the community college to help keep students in school and help them finish their community college units faster so they can get to the four-year university. It's supposed to help them replace some of the money they might make from working. The Community College Promise Grant is the grant that I got. Sorry, I thought these slides were in the other order. The Community College Promise Grant used to be called the Board of Governors Waiver. If you went to community college here in the state of California, you might remember the BOG waiver. It's a program that helped a lot of people get their community college fees waived, and these days we call it the Community College Promise Grant. Now, this waives enrollment fees for California residents for California residents and CADAA students. And it's automatic if you fill out FAFSA or CADAA. You don't have to apply for it separately. Remember, all of these programs you don't have to apply for separately. You need to make sure that you do FAFSA or CADAA. I also want to let you know that there's a transfer grant for students who want to go to the California HBCU system. Who want to go to the HBCU system, but they're from California. There is not a historically Black college or university in the state of California. And in recognition of that, CSAC has set up a one-time grant of $5,000 for students who finish their associate's degree of transfer and are accepted to an eligible HBCU. They can use that money for whatever they want, moving expenses, rent, books, tuition, whatever it is that they want. We do ask these students to sign an attestation form saying that they'll come back to California with all those skills that they get at their HBCU. This is a relatively new program, but you can find out more information about it at the link at the bottom of the screen. Remember, you're going to get access to the slides. Now, if you have questions about any of these programs, remember to drop them in the Q&A box down below so we can keep track of your questions and make sure to answer them. I also want to make sure that you walk away tonight knowing about CalKids. This is the last program we're going to talk about for now. CalKids is a program of the California Treasurer's Office, and they've been setting aside money for students across the state of California. Now, this includes students younger than 12th grade. So even if you're one of the parents in the room of a 9th grader or a 10th grader, this program might already be available to you. Even if you have younger kids in the household, they also might have this program available. What's important to know is that this is an opt-in program, so you have to go and claim the money. Even if the money's set aside for you, if you don't claim it, it's not going to be yours. And so you go to calkids.org to find out if you have a CalKids account. The CalKids account is up to $1,500, and it's money that can be used to pay for your tuition, fees, books, things like that. I'm going to cover some things on FAFSA and CADAA that are the same regardless of which application you do. Whether you do FAFSA or CADAA, dependency is a really important concept to understand. This is whether or not the parents have to fill out parts of FAFSA. Unfortunately, you don't get to decide whether or not you're independent as a student. FAFSA or CADAA is going to ask you questions, and that's going to determine your dependency status. FAFSA or CADAA is going to tell you whether or not you need parent information, and if you need parent information, you have to provide it. Otherwise, you can only be considered for one type of financial aid, which is one type of student loan. Now, even if your parents don't claim you on the taxes, you might still be dependent for financial aid. And that's because financial aid dependency and tax dependency are two different things. So whoever claims whoever on the taxes doesn't matter for financial aid. What matters is the questions that we're going to cover, not on this slide, but the next slide, the personal circumstance questions. So I want to remind you that students may need to provide parent information even if the student's living on their own and paying their own bills, even if the student files their own taxes, even if the student is not claimed as a tax dependent by the parents, even if the student lives in another state, receives no financial support from the parents, lives with a different family member, even if a non-parent claims the student on taxes, and even if the student's parents live in another country. Even in all of those situations, if FAFSA or CADAA says that a parent has to fill out the application, a parent has to fill out the application. Unless the student is 24 or can answer yes to one of the questions, they'll need to provide information. Here are the questions. Everybody always asks what the questions are. These are the questions. Students will be asked these on either FAFSA or CADAA. This is the screenshot from FAFSA, but it's the same questions on CADAA. And the students are considered automatically independent if they are 24 or when they get married. And so students who are born after January 1st, 2003 typically have to provide parent information. Here are the personal circumstances. If they are active duty or veteran U.S. Armed Forces, if they have children that they support, if they are an orphan, meaning both biological parents have died and they have not been adopted, if they are a ward of the court, or if they were in foster care, if the student was legally emancipated by a court of law, or was in a legal guardianship, court-ordered legal guardianship. If a student can answer yes to any one of these questions, they can fill out FAFSA by themselves. Otherwise, in most cases, students under 24 have to fill out FAFSA with a parent. We oftentimes get questions about parents living in another country. In that case, the parent still has to fill out FAFSA. They'll report their income and assets by converting it to US dollars and filling out FAFSA or CADAA manually. If it isn't possible because there's no contact with the parents, or it would be unsafe to contact the parents, for example, cases of refugees or familial abandonment, then the student will request unusual circumstances on FAFSA or CADAA. Unusual circumstances is available on both applications, and it's meant for students who have a complete break in their family situation due to situations of violence or familial abandonment. Colleges will follow up with the unusual circumstance students, and students have to provide documentation. So this is not really a workaround if the parent wants to refuse, because the student's going to have to prove that they need an unusual circumstance. In some cases, a student will live with somebody who's not their parent, an aunt, an uncle, a foster parent, a grandparent, an older sibling, and a legal guardian. None of those are considered a parent for FAFSA. If the student's legal parents can be reached, they have to provide information on FAFSA. And remember, if the student has zero contact with their biological parents due to situations of violence, they can select yes to unusual circumstances, and then they'll have to talk to the college about proving that so that the college can override their dependency status. CSAC cannot override student dependency status. It has to happen with the college. Another question that we get that applies to both FAFSA and CADAA is, what tax year are we going to need? And for the 26-27 application, you're going to use the 2024 taxes. 26-27 uses 2024. If you have a junior this year, you're going to fill out the 27-28 form, which will use 2025 taxes. You can use that figure it out by using the fall semester that the student's going to college and subtracting 2 years. So students going to college in the fall of 26 will use 24 taxes. Students going to college in the fall of 27 will use 25 taxes. You also don't have to update your tax information when you fill out your when you file your taxes, because you're going to use those taxes on the following year. You can see here, this is the academic year the school will attend and which tax year you'll use on the application. On the parent section of both applications, you're going to see the federal benefits received question. Both applications are going to ask this. The screenshot you see is from FAFSA, but I'm going to show you both screenshots in a second. There are a few things to know about the federal benefits question. One is that anyone in their family doesn't mean your extended family. Anyone in the family means people who live in the household and depend on the parents for 50% or more of their income. Typically, this is siblings or grandparents who live in the house who are being supported by the parents, or aunts and uncles who live in the house who are being supported by the parents. So anyone in the family means in the household. And then also, if anyone in the family received federal public assistance programs, then the family will not have to report assets on FAFSA. And I'll flag the asset screen when we look at it in a few minutes. Federal public assistance programs include Medi-Cal, Medicaid, SNAP, CalFresh, TANF, CalWorks, free or reduced price school lunch, supplemental security income, that's SSI, and the earned income tax credit on your taxes. I do want to flag here that everyone in California at a public school receives free or reduced price lunch because we have a universal free lunch law in California. You can't claim that here unless your family meets U.S. Department of Agriculture standards. So I've linked those standards on this slide. So you can come back and look to see if you do meet those standards so that you can select it. These are the two versions of this same set of questions. I just wanted you to see that they're the same on both applications. They're just formatted a little differently. The federal benefits for FAFSA are on the left. The federal benefits for CADAA are on the right. There's a lot of situations where the questions are the same on both applications, and so if you're filling out one or the other, you'll benefit from information about both. I want to remind you of the financial aid deadlines. A lot of people ask us, when do we have to apply by? Now, we here at CSAC, we encourage you to apply as quickly as possible. We don't want you to wait until the last minute, and there's a few reasons why. First of all, if you wait until the last minute, it'll delay that whole process that I shared with you at the beginning. Means you'll get your financial aid award letters later. You'll have less time to think about the financial decision. You'll have less time to consider everything. And so applying early is better. But if you do need to wait, the California state priority deadline is March 2nd, 2026. That's for anyone who's planning to attend a four-year university, public or private. If you're planning to go to community college, which is a super awesome decision, I loved community college. The deadline is September 2nd, 2026. This is another instance where we don't want students to wait. As soon as a student knows they're going to community college, they should apply for financial aid. And the reason why is that September 2nd is after most semesters have started at community college, which means you'll be on the hook for the tuition and fees at the community college, and you won't have any financial aid yet because you haven't even applied. So we recommend you apply for financial aid as soon as you know you're going to college. It's free to do, it's pretty easy, and there's only a risk that you will receive aid. Your college could also have an earlier deadline, especially a private school. If your student is interested in a private university, they may have an earlier deadline. I want to let you know that FAFSA and CADAA follow the academic year. So the 26-27 academic year is the fall of 2026 and the winter and spring of 2027. The 2026-27 FAFSA goes with that academic year. The 27-28 FAFSA goes with the fall of 2027 and the winter and spring of 2028, which seems really far away, but for some of you, it's really coming up fast. So here are some takeaways for all parents, regardless of your documentation status. Students under the age of 24 usually need to provide parent information. It isn't a choice. Many questions are the same on both FAFSA and CADAA, so a lot of this information applies to both applications. The deadlines are the same for FAFSA and CADAA. We just went over these, March 2nd and September 2nd. And you should use 2024 tax information for the 26-27 FAFSA or CADAA. Now, I've left you some resources here in Spanish for the folks in the room who speak Spanish. You also have some upcoming sessions with CSAC with us. There's a January 29th session that'll be entirely in Spanish. And then likely I will be back to present this February 5th session in English. Although I haven't been assigned to do it yet, my guess is that I'll be assigned to do it. This is a lot of information that's available for you in Spanish to help you walk through the application process. If you need to call somebody for help, there's lots of help available, and it's all free. Financial aid assistance should always be free. If somebody's asking you to pay, you're in the wrong place. You do not need to pay to get help to fill out your financial aid application. On the left-hand side, you have information for FAFSA. If you need to ask questions about FAFSA or something breaks on studentaid.gov, you need to call FAFSA. And this is their phone number and their call center, the times that their call center is open. If you need to talk to them in another language, this is the call number for their language hotline, and they can support up to 60 languages. Those are the commonly spoken languages in the US, including Spanish. The California DREAM Act application is California's application. So you'd be calling us here at CSAC. This is our student support center. These are the times we're open, and this is our language capacity. We can do up to 70 languages. We also have an email system. The email system's not as fast as calling us, but if you have a question and it's not time sensitive, you can email our folks at student support. We're going to talk specifically about FAFSA now. I've got about 8 or 9 slides on FAFSA specifically. So if you've got questions about what I've just covered, make sure you drop them in that Q&A box down below so we can keep track of them. The free application for federal student aid is for U.S. citizens or green card holders or students with asylum or refugee status. So if you're one of those, FAFSA is the application for you. You can get to studentaid.gov using this QR code at the top, but we're also going to talk about studentaid.gov a lot. So you're going to get that, you're going to remember that website by the time we're done today. The most recent updates to FAFSA is that they've made a few changes to the application this year, but nothing like it was a couple of years ago. If you remember the stories in the news a couple of years ago about FAFSA being impossible to fill out, I want you to know that those days are over. FAFSA is a super easy application now. It has course corrected. It's a role-based application, and that means that everyone who contributes to it has a role. So the student has a role and a part of the application to fill out. The parent has a role, a part of the application to fill out. And if the student is married, the student's spouse would fill out information. Most high school seniors are not going to be married, but if the student is married, they have to provide information about their spouse. Everyone has to have an account on studentaid.gov. You only need one account per person, but everyone has to have one. You complete separate sections of the same application, and we strongly recommend that the student start the application and invite the parent. There was a FAFSA beta. It's not, it's over. Now FAFSA is just open, so you can fill out FAFSA on studentaid.gov. All contributors create an account, and there's no identity validation process for non-SSN contributors. If you are a parent who doesn't have a social security number, there's no extra process for you anymore. That was also a part of what happened a couple of years ago, and again, those days are over. There is a new verification process for some students who are going to be asked to confirm their identity while they're filling out FAFSA. There's also a new contributor invitation process that is much easier than previous years. And there was a law passed this summer that small businesses and family farms are now exempt from FAFSA, which is good news for parents who have small businesses. A really common question that I get is which parent should get a studentaid.gov account? And I want to let you know that it depends on how many tax returns there are in the family. So your marital status and how you file taxes is what determines who gets a studentaid.gov account. And this is the decision tree about that. When parents are legally married and they file taxes together, only one parent needs an account and can report for both parents. FSA ID and studentaid.gov account mean the same thing. We typically use studentaid.gov account at CSAC, but you might see FSA ID in other places. Those two things mean the same thing. And then this is a common situation, especially in immigrant households. One parent files head of household and the other parent does not file. In that case, both parents need an FSA ID. Both parents need to fill out FAFSA. When parents live together but are not legally married and they file taxes separately for any reason, both parents have to get an account and sign up for FAFSA. And when the parents are divorced, then the parent that provided the most financial support for the student in the last 12 months is the parent who needs an account. And if that parent is remarried, the step-parent income has to be reported too. Even if the step-parent has not legally adopted the student, the step-parent does have to provide income on FAFSA. So, if you've got questions about which parent needs an account, please feel free to drop them in that Q&A box down below so that we can track your questions tonight. Everyone who fills out FAFSA, students and parents, has to consent to direct data exchange. This is a new law in the past few years. And what that means is that you're telling the Department of Education that it's okay for them to go talk to the IRS about your tax returns. Now, this might seem counterintuitive for students who are high school students who didn't file taxes in 2024, but the application doesn't care about that. It doesn't matter if you didn't file taxes. You still have to say yes. You still have to let them go look and prove you didn't file taxes. That's also true for undocumented parents and any parent who didn't file taxes. If you're filling out FAFSA, you have to let them go look at the IRS, even if they're going to find nothing. They're going to find the 2024 taxes if there's something to find, and they're going to import most of that information manually. But very importantly, your information's not going to appear on the screen. That's confusing for a lot of parents because you say yes to this, but then you don't get to see the information. All you're going to see is this green box that says success. We've imported your information. If you file taxes with an ITIN, you have to consent to DDX, but it will fail. And I want you to know that you didn't do anything wrong. If you file taxes with an ITIN, you're going to see this yellow data not received box. And that just means you have to input your information manually. This system, while mandated, is not set up to deal with tax returns for ITINs yet. And that's why it will fail. It's not something you did, it's that the government hasn't fixed it yet. And so if you file with an ITIN, you see the data not received box. That data not received box just means you're going to fill in your information manually. The same thing is true for high school students. High school students, they're not going to find a tax return for most high school students because most high school students don't file taxes at 16 years old. And so high school students are also going to see this yellow data not received box. You didn't do anything wrong. You can hit continue and report your income manually, even if that income is zero. And I do want to let you know, if anyone in the line does not consent to direct data exchange, the student will not be considered for aid. So that includes the student. If the student didn't consent, that includes a parent if a parent didn't consent. Everybody has to consent. That's the law now. This is a really tricky question. So I want to make sure I let you know it's tricky for people who are native English speakers, but for folks who English is their second language, it's even more tricky. This question's asking it backwards. And I and many other people spoke to the Department of Education about this, and they did not do a very good job with fixing it. So look out for this question because it's not asking what you think it's asking. This question is asking, will the parents provide information on FAFSA? But if the parents will provide information, you answer no. If the parents are refusing, you answer yes. And I know that that's backwards, but I just want to tell you that this question's going to come up and it's going to be confusing. If the parents are providing information, the answer is no. If the parents are required and refuse, the answer is yes. When somebody checks yes on this question, their student is only eligible for one type of loan, which is the direct unsubsidized loan. That's the title of this question, but it's confusing. So hopefully that's helpful, but let me know if you have questions about this tricky question. This is the trickiest question on FAFSA as far as I'm concerned. Okay, students might be asked their financial information, especially if they didn't file a tax return. So this question here, it's okay to answer no. because most high school seniors have not filed taxes. Being honest on FAFSA is really recommended. It's okay to say no if the answer is no. If you say yes, you'll be asked to provide information from your tax return. If you say no, you'll be asked to report your income, even if that income is zero. And it might help you to have your tax return nearby when you complete FAFSA. There's a brand new invitation process for inviting a parent to FAFSA. This is unique to FAFSA. It's not a part of the CADAA. The student's going to enter an email address to send an invitation, and then studentaid.gov will send an email to that email address. The student can also copy and paste the invitation link and just give it to the contributor. The contributor will accept the invitation or enter the code on studentaid.gov. The contributor has to have, this is the parent usually. Contributor here means parent. So the parent has to have a studentaid.gov account. Now, there's a word in here that might be confusing to some people. It says household financial situation. This might confuse some people if the student lives alone. That is just poor wording on behalf of the U.S. Department of Education. In this case, if the parent is being required to provide information, you need to invite the parent to the application. This is what the parent will see. So we're moving into the parent section of FAFSA right now. The parent will see this email that's got a big blue invitation button in the middle of it, accept invitation, and they'll get this code. And so they will log in to studentaid.gov, and then they will enter this code on studentaid.gov. And that's supposed to solve a lot of the invitation problems that we're seeing with FAFSA right now. Remember, if you've got questions about any of this, please use that Q&A box at the bottom of the screen so that we can capture your questions. I'm going to cover a couple of screens in the parent section. The parent section is not very long. It's 35 questions at most, but I'm going to cover a couple of questions that can be really confusing for people. They're going to ask you if your family size is the same as it was on your taxes. They're going to import your tax information, right? Because that's what Direct Data Exchange does. But your family size might be different now than it was in 2024. Maybe you've had a birth or a death in the family. Maybe somebody else claims somebody in the family. You want to make sure to update your accurate family size here, which might be different than your tax returns. You're also going to report the number of students that are in college during the academic year, but it does not, if the parent is a student, if the parent is a college student, the parent cannot be listed here. So it's only the number of children in the household who are students that you should report here. There are a couple of screens that cover financial information for parents, and I've left you a lot of notes here about what to do with these specific screens. But you're going to report how you filled out your taxes, if you filled out a tax form, and if you filed a joint tax reform, and if you how you filed, single, head of household, jointly, separately, or a surviving spouse. It's also going to ask you the amount of an IRA rollover or a pension rollover. That's only if that happened to you. Otherwise, zero is an appropriate answer. It's going to ask you the amount of college grants, scholarships, and AmeriCorps benefits that are reported as income. This is a really tricky question because a lot of parents think that the money that their students receive should be claimed on the parent's tax return, and that's not true. Any money the student receives after the age of 18, the parent does not need to claim it. And so the parents do not report student grants and scholarships. So unless the parent themselves was a student in 2024, the answer here is usually zero. Foreign earned income exclusion is a specific tax category, and if that's happening to you, you usually know it, and you can fill out that information here. You're also going to be asked the child support that you received, and this is for any child in the household, and it's based on the previous calendar year. So this is one of the only questions that the answer changes whether you fill out FAFSA this fall or you fill it out next winter. If you did FAFSA in 2025, you're going to fill out 2024 child support received. If you do it in 2026, you're going to fill out 2025 child support received. Here's a couple of other pieces of financial information. This is the assets page. Remember when I talked about federal benefits before, I said that some people will not see the assets page. This is that page. So if you don't see this page, you don't have to fill it out. And you didn't do anything wrong. You just don't have to fill it out. FAFSA works on skip logic. It's only going to show you the questions you need to answer. If you see these questions, you do have to answer them. And a lot of parents are very concerned about these questions. You have to report what's in your checking and savings accounts and cash you have on hand. You're also supposed to report your assets, but they only want some of your assets. So I've made you a yes/no list here on this side of the slide. You're not supposed to include your retirement accounts, that's your IRA or your 401k, and you don't include the home you own and live in. So if you own a house and you live in it, you don't have to include the worth of that house on FAFSA. This is a huge mistake I see parents make all the time, and it prices them out of aid because real estate's so expensive in California. But if you own the house and you live in it, it is not an asset. If you own a second property for any reason, you do have to report it. Even if family lives in that property, even if it's meant for retirement, even if. Second property for any reason is an investment. If you own a CD, stocks, bonds, or other financial investments, those are investments. And the 529 plan for the student who is filling out FAFSA. And then the net worth of businesses, you don't have to report anything unless your business is more than 100 employees. You can just report 0 and that's okay. I want to talk to you about financial aid appeals because a lot of families ask about this. This is the last slide that's about FAFSA specifically. Financial aid administrators at the college are empowered to accept appeals, and typically that appeal takes the form of a special circumstance. So if something has changed since 2024, like the financial situation of the household, then the family can go and appeal for more financial aid. That could include change in income, change in employment status, a new medical condition, disability in the family, change in housing status like losing a home or foreclosure. It could include a natural disaster. Whoops, hang on a second here. I hit stop share. Hang on. It could include a natural disaster, for example, folks who are affected by the Pasadena or Altadena fires, tuition expenses, or childcare expenses. If any of those things have gone up, you can apply for special circumstances. You have to do it at the college. So you have to wait for the college to provide you with the package, and then you have to appeal. It's just another reason to do it early so you have enough time for the appeals process. Now we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about mixed status families. We're going to talk about families who have mixed immigration status. Typically, the student is a U.S. citizen or green card holder, and the parent is not. The parent does not have documented status. So a big question we get is, can those students apply for FAFSA? And the answer is yes. The student can apply for FAFSA based on the student's legal status, not the parent's status. Now, those parents, if you're filling out FAFSA, you're going to have to create a studentaid.gov account to sign the FAFSA. There's no more paper signature page. If you did a paper signature page in the past, it doesn't exist anymore. You have to do it online. This is the page on FAFSA that worries parents the most, which is the page where they have to check, I do not have a social security number. This is really scary for a lot of families for really understandable reasons. So I'm going to talk in a moment about the resources CSAC has created and the ability for these students to fill out CADAA instead of FAFSA. One more thing, there's an old workaround that's floating around, and I don't want you to fall into this trap. We used to be able to use 9 zeros as a social security number. You can't do that anymore. You have to check this box, and that's scary for a lot of people. So let's talk about what that looks like. When you're filling out FAFSA, you have to get a studentaid.gov account. You can't get around that. You don't have to fill out the identity verification process. That was a big pain in the butt. It's gone now, which is great. And you do have to manually enter your information. Remember that direct data exchange is going to fail. So you'll have to make sure that you have your tax return next to you. Now, we've created some resources for families that are concerned about sharing their documentation status with the federal government, because right now that can be a really worrying and terrifying thing to do. And so I want to show you these two resources. We have these in multiple languages on our website. And these resources are documents that will help you walk through the decision. There's no one size fits all answer for what these families should do. And so our job is to empower you with the resources to make informed decisions. What I can tell you is that if your undocumented person in your family is already known to the US federal government, either through DACA that's expired or valid, through an immigration court claim, through the criminal justice system, through FAFSA from a previous year, through other, like an overstayed visa, something like that, your family's information, your family member's information is already in the US federal government's system, right? And so that lowers your risk, theoretically. That means that giving them your information again doesn't really disclose your undocumented status. They already know you're undocumented, right? But that might still be really scary for folks. And so the California DREAM Act application is available for those students. And these documents walk you through what you might need to think about as you're making that decision. They're available in 7 languages on our website, and the link to that website is down here at the bottom of the page. You might feel tempted to do a paper FAFSA, especially if you run into problems. I really want to warn you, don't do that. We say don't do that. The US Department of Education says don't do that. Please don't do this unless you absolutely have to. It's a last resort. There's no way to track it. There's no timeline on when they'll be processed. It doesn't avoid data privacy issues, and I'm not trained on how to fill it out. This is a 23-page government form filled with places for you to make mistakes, and nobody knows how to tell you how to figure it out. And so I would not do this unless it is a very last resort. So let's talk about CADAA for FAFSA filers. The California DREAM Act application is open for all filers who are also mixed status students. And so you can complete CADAA and apply for state and institutional aid. I do want to let you know you can't apply for federal aid through the CADAA. So you give up the Pell Grant, federal work study, and student loans when you apply through CADAA. So we want to make sure families are making informed decisions, weighing that data privacy issue with the potential aid. You can still apply for Cal Grant, Middle Class Scholarship, the State University Grant, the Blue and Gold program, all of those through CADAA. But if that federal aid is make or break, you may want to be weighing the decisions. And that's what those guides are intended to help you do. If you do decide to do CADAA now, you can always do FAFSA later. You're not prevented from doing FAFSA later if you decide to do it. So here's some key takeaways for undocumented parents. Your student qualifies for federal aid if they're a U.S. citizen or if they have documented status in the U.S. And completing FAFSA might be risky. And so we have offered CADAA as a safe way for FAFSA eligible students to apply for state and institutional aid. CADAA is California's application, and that's what we're going to talk about now. This is the tail end of my presentation, and then we're going to do questions and answers. So if you've got those questions, drop them in the Q&A down below. The California DREAM Act application is an alternative to FAFSA, and it's administered by CSAC. That's us. That's who I work for. The California Student Aid Commission is a state government agency in California, and we do not share the information that we receive on this application with anyone else. We only use it for financial aid purposes. We don't share it with immigration enforcement. We have no mechanism to do that. We've not been directed to do that. And we would fight if we were directed to do that. I want you to know that our lawyer is a former immigration attorney, and she is ready to protect student data with the full force of the law. Now, CADAA is for undocumented students who've gone to school in California for at least 3 years or mixed status students. and it's an application for state and institutional aid. It's got the same deadlines as FAFSA, March 2nd or September 2nd for community college. The QR code on the screen you can scan to get to the CADAA application. We also have a number of resources for undocumented students on our website. This is screenshots from our undocumented resource page. You can get to that at the QR code or at the URL at the bottom of the screen. We've got resources in English and Spanish to explain financial aid to you. You can also read our data privacy statement on this website. A student qualifies for CADAA by meeting what's called AB 540 eligibility. What does that mean? Well, that means that the student has 3 years of credits in school in K through 12, or they've attended an adult school, or they've attended a California community college. So they need 3 years of college credits, high school credits, elementary school credits, and it doesn't have to be consecutive. It can be a year in first grade and a year in fifth grade and a year in eighth grade, and that's sufficient. And then they need to graduate from a California high school, or they need to attain an associate's degree from a community college. The student also has to agree that they're going to adjust their immigration status as soon as possible. Hey Juan, you've got the whiteboard on my screen. Yeah, you're good. It's okay. The Dreamer Service Incentive Grant is specifically for CADAA filers, whether you're from a mixed status family or if you're not from a mixed status family. The Dreamer Service Incentive Grant is up to $4,500 a year. This basically replaces the work study program. You have to be attending a Cal Grant eligible university. That's the colleges or the universities or the community colleges. It can be public or private. And you do community service, 100 hours a quarter or 150 hours a semester. DSIG does have an application in addition to CADAA. It's one of the few programs that has a separate application. Once you've completed the CADAA, you can apply for DSIG at the QR code on the screen, or you can visit the website that's listed here on the slide. I want to show you the registration status for CADAA if you are a mixed status student, because it's going to ask you if you have a social security number, and you might be tempted to put no, even though you do. Remember, you should answer these questions honestly. It's just trying to get you to the right place. We're not trying to track anyone. We're just trying to make sure we get you to the right place. Those mixed status students are going to see a question about whether or not they got their social security number through work authorization or through DACA. And the answer to that is going to be no, because these are students with a green card or US citizenship, asylum, or refugee status. And are you a US citizen or eligible non-citizen? And it lists the same thing that I just said here as the qualifications for that. The answer to that is yes. And then students, mixed status students, when they register for CADAA, they are going to see this big long disclaimer that's like, hey, FAFSA is an option that is available for you, and I know that you are choosing to do CADAA instead because you have data privacy concerns about FAFSA. And so you have to agree that you are choosing to do CADAA and therefore giving up federal aid. The parents are going to have to provide their state of residence. This is a question on the parent section of CADAA. The student section of CADAA is really easy. You do provide financial information if you filled out taxes, but most high school students didn't, so they'll just check no and move on. In what state does the parent live? And this is important because to be considered for California aid, you have to have a parent who is a resident of California. That's about paying taxes. And so if the parents pay taxes in California, then you can have access to California aid. But I do want you to know that even if your student, even if your parent doesn't live in California, you can still receive you can still receive institutional aid, campus aid. So you might still be able to receive the Board of Governors waiver or the Student Success Completion Grant or the the State University Grant, the Blue and Gold program. Those are all funds that come directly from the college. And so even if I just want you to know that the parent needs to live in California to receive state aid. CADAA doesn't have direct data exchange, which is great news. It's not connected to the IRS. CADAA is not connected to the federal government system at all. So parents do have to input tax information manually. It's going to ask you if you did your taxes. It's going to ask you the filing status on the taxes. And then it's going to ask you to fill out tax information. This is the most frustrating part. We've made it as easy as possible. Every time you click one of these black I buttons, it's going to show you exactly where on the tax form to find that information. And every single one of these black I buttons has a picture of the tax form so you can find the information as quickly as possible. Now, if you say you're not going to file taxes, but then you tell us you made more than the tax filing threshold, we're going to ask you to file taxes. So here's the tax filing thresholds for 2024. If the parent is not going to file, but they made more than these tax thresholds, they're going to have to get an I-10 and file taxes. If the parents are a will filed, then once they provide estimates, we'll process aid based on estimates. But after the tax return is filed, you need to come back and update CADAA with the information because we don't have direct data exchange, which is a good thing, but it means you do have to come back and update us. Okay, you have applied for financial aid. Excellent news. What's going to happen next? If you did FAFSA, your student's going to monitor studentaid.gov until FAFSA is processed. That is 5 to 7 days. CSAC, for the California DREAM Act application, you're going to check the DREAM Act website to see when your application is processed. Once FAFSA or CADAA is processed, your students should create a Web Grants for Students account. This is a student account and not a parent account, but the students should create an account because that's where they can manage their state-based aid. And then remember, the student's going to follow up with the college that they applied to or plan to attend to receive a financial aid award letter. That can take several weeks. It's not a fast process. I'm sorry, I wish it was. But a financial aid award letter can take time. The best thing to do to find out when you're going to receive it is once FAFSA or CADAA is processed, call the school and politely ask them when they plan to award. This is a version of our Cash for College presentation, but if you find yourself needing more help, there's always free help available. You can find local Cash for College events in your area at this link here, and you can attend a statewide Cash for College webinar or one of our office hours where we do one-on-one assistance at this link here. If you've seen our social media channels, you've probably seen my face before. I do the social media here at CSAC along with my colleagues Golmo, Jared, and Michael. And these are some of the places you can find us online. We answer questions in our DMs, we make videos about common topics, and we post resources for families and students. So that's the end of my presentation tonight. I'm going to turn my attention to the questions. This slide here has information about how you can contact CSAC if you still have questions after tonight's presentation. There's the Cash for College email. That's my colleagues who run the Cash for College program. And you can also contact student support.